For centuries, the lands of southeastern Europe stood at the meeting point of two great powers, the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg Monarchy. This was not a peaceful border. It was a military frontier where villages could become battlefields, where families lived with the fear of raids and invasion, and where generations grew up knowing that war might arrive at their doorstep. To understand the history of the Danube Swabians, we must first understand the world they entered, a frontier shaped by conflict, resilience, and survival. After the Ottoman conquest of much of medieval Hungary in the 16th century, Central Europe became a contested zone between the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg rulers. Major conflicts, including the sieges of Vienna and repeated campaigns across Hungary, defined life for generations. The border constantly moved. A village that belonged to one empire in one generation might belong to another in the next. Ordinary people, farmers, craftsmen, women, and children, often paid the greatest price. The Habsburg rulers created what became known as the military frontier, or Militärgrenze. Unlike ordinary provinces, this region was governed largely by military authority. Settlers received land and certain privileges in exchange for military service. A farmer might plow his fields during the day, but be expected to defend the frontier when the alarm bells rang. The frontier created a unique culture, one where agriculture and military duty existed side by side. Many frontier settlers became what historians often describe as soldier farmers. Their survival depended on the land, but their security depended on their ability to fight. Military obligations passed through generations. Fathers taught sons not only how to cultivate the earth, but also how to defend their homes. This created communities that were disciplined, self-reliant, and deeply shaped by the realities of war. The military frontier was one of Europe's great cultural crossroads. German-speaking settlers lived alongside Serbs, Croats, Hungarians, Romanians, and many other communities. These groups traded with one another, married across cultural boundaries in some cases, and shared the challenges of frontier life. But competition for land, differences in religion, imperial policies, and memories of past conflicts could also create deep tensions. The frontier was a place of both cooperation and division. For people living near the border, war was not an event recorded in a history book. It was a sound, the ringing of church bells warning of danger. It was the sight of smoke on the horizon. It was the decision of whether to flee, hide, or defend the home your family had worked for generations to build. Many frontier communities experienced repeated cycles of destruction and rebuilding. The long Ottoman Habsburg struggle left enormous areas of southeastern Europe devastated and underpopulated. When the Habsburg Empire gained control of these territories, it launched major settlement programs. German-speaking colonists, including the people who would later be called Danube Swabians, were invited to transform these former war zones into productive agricultural communities. The villages they created rose from lands that had endured centuries of conflict. Even after the frontier became more stable, the memory of conflict remained. Stories of invasions, battles, military service, and survival were passed from grandparents to children. These experiences influenced how communities viewed authority, religion, neighboring groups, and their own identity. For the Danube Swabians, understanding the frontier means understanding the environment that shaped their ancestors for generations. For genealogists, the military frontier offers a rich but challenging record trail. Ancestors may appear in military registers, land allocations, church records, and imperial censuses. Understanding the political situation of the frontier helps explain why families moved, changed allegiances, or settled in particular villages. A surname in a village record may represent a story of migration, military obligation, and survival. The story of the military frontier is ultimately a story about ordinary people living through extraordinary times. For centuries, they raised families, built churches, planted crops, and preserved their traditions while existing on the fault line between competing empires. Their descendants inherited not only their names and villages, but also the legacy of endurance that allowed these communities to survive. In the next episode, we will explore how these frontier settlements developed into thriving villages with their own unique customs, traditions, and cultural identity. Thank you for joining me as we explored the military frontier, the place where empires collided, where ordinary families became soldiers and farmers, and where the ancestors of the Danube Swabians endured centuries of uncertainty, sacrifice, and change. Their story is not simply one of war. It is a story of resilience, faith, community, and the determination to build a future, even in the shadow of conflict. If you have Danube Swabian roots, I would love to hear where your ancestors came from. Share your family villages, surnames, and stories in the comments below, and let's continue preserving this remarkable heritage together. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, share, and follow Ancestral Spotlight so you do not miss future episodes exploring the history, migration, villages, traditions, and genealogy of the Danube Swabian people.